Hello and welcome to Social Perspectives. I'm J. Gentile Everett. We're here today to share with you how wonderful it is to establish a relationship with God. It doesn't matter too much about all of the other things to which you are involved. It is most critical for every life to have a union with a divine superior being. And today we decided that we would interrupt the normal movements of our show and go back to our roots for just a moment and share with you the foundation upon which we have built all that exists with us. We ask that you might stay tuned. We're going to be right back with a fascinating story of how God moves in our humanity and how because of him we are all better people. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Social Perspectives. Today, as I indicated, we're going to be going back to a subject that involves all of us. And that subject has to do with where is God in your life, and do you have questions that you would like to ask God? Let me be the first to say I do. And one of the first questions that I always had when it came to my relationship with God was, God, why would you permit certain calamities and certain moments of discomfort to infiltrate my space when I do all I know to do to be kind and loving and generous and trying to endure all that comes along with being a servant of yours? Why then, God, would I have to deal with pain and suffering? These are legitimate questions. And if you have them, do not feel that there is something wrong with your relationship with God or your understanding of God. It's very real for all of us to have these questions about God. Why? Everything starts with why. Why do we have hunger when we have so many other people with more than enough to eat? Why do we have catastrophes and tragedies to happen to certain people and it never seemed to happen to another group of people? Why? That is always one of the questions. Well, today we're going to try to answer at least one of those questions. Now, we will not have long to deal with this subject, so we're going to have to do it in phases and stages. Today we are going to start with the teaching of God, and we're going to be talking about what does it mean when God is creating a miracle moment for us. And we want you to come with us for a moment as we go on this journey, and we're going to look at the book of Exodus. It is a story there that is a very old and familiar story to virtually all serious church members and biblical students. It is found in the book of Exodus chapter 14, and we're going to be looking at verses 13 and 14 for just a few moments. It reads, "And Moses said, Fear ye not, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. For he will show you today, for the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, ye shall see them again no more, forever. The Lord shall fight for you, and you shall hold your peace." So today we're going to be talking about how God creates a miracle moment for each of us. The first thing before we go into this text, we will have to understand that there is a kind of theological pattern of divine methods that exist in the book of Exodus. The story yet is familiar. The story has a lot of folklore to it with respect to the thoughts and minds of those outside of the church. But it is amazing to me to see how God orchestrated his power, how God moved in this situation. The situation of God's children leaving the flesh pots of Egypt, where they had been in bondage for more than 400 years, and now they are on their way to the promised land, and God leads them to the Red Sea. Here they are at the Red Sea. This is what's so interesting. God already knew that he was going to lead them to the Red Sea. He already knew, because he is omniscient, he knows everything. He already knew that Pharaoh would be coming after the children of Israel at some point. And he knew the point that they would be coming after them would be the point when they would be situated there at the Red Sea and unable to cross it. Safety for them meant they had to get on the other side of the sea. And look at God orchestrating, leading, directing his children to get to the Red Sea, where he knew they would be boxed in. Wow. Now let's just think about this for a moment. Before we go into the idea of getting across the Red Sea, one who has a serious relationship with God would have to ask the question, why would God appear to be so cruel? Cruel because for Egypt to let Israel go, God had to kill the firstborn of the Egyptians. And the question would have to be, did the firstborn of the Egyptians have anything to do with the enslavement of Israel? Were they just simply children of those who led in that direction? Why would God do it, you might ask? Sometimes we have to understand that when God does some things, he always has a relationship to what he's doing that we do not have. And as a result of that, it frees him. He being an ontological triune, it frees him to do whatever he wants to do because of the relationship that he has with every human and divine event. God took away the firstborn of the Egyptians. But then look at what else God did. God gave up his only son. Not one, the only son. Not part of his family, but his only son. He gave up his only son, not just for Israel, but for all people to come to know him through the death of his son. God had a different relationship with life. That's why when I hear people talking about, the Bible says that God wants us to not kill, but yet he will kill. And I want to make it clear the reason why God can do it is because God is the only one that can give life. So that gives him the authority to take it. I cannot give life. I cannot create life. That's why he says to me, I do not expect, nor will I sanction that you take a life. because you are taking something that you cannot replace. These are the kinds of theological patterns of divine methods that we were referencing earlier. Let's take another look at what had to happen this day. Here they are, Israel, up against the Red Sea. And here we have the enemy, the Egyptians, after having a kind of economic summit, discovered that they were going to need those Israelites to come back to Egypt if they were going to have an economy that would thrive or even survive. So they came back to get them. And I want everybody to notice, when they were on their way to get the children of Israel, to bring them back into bondage, God had them boxed in. God boxed in his children. God had his children in a place, and this may be something that others can relate to. God had his children in a place where they could not go forward because they couldn't get across the Red Sea. And they could not go backward because if they were to retreat and go in the opposite direction, they would be led back into the hands of Pharaoh and the taskmasters in the Egyptians. We're going to take a pause and take a break right now. Don't you go anywhere, because you want to find out what God had in mind when he boxed in Israel. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
When you're in need of making the old new again with beautiful upholstery, D. Berry's Upholstery is the best, whether it's automobile interior or exterior, boats, church pews, or any residential or commercial seating and the like. Look no further. D. Berry Upholstery's got you covered. Call D. Berry's at 910-276-2265 and experience new again. Hello. If you or someone you know is in need of a wedding cake, reach out to CB Treats, currently located in Rock Hill, South Carolina. CB Treats provides custom-designed, delicious cakes and top-tier customer service. In addition to wedding cakes, CB Treats also provides elegant custom cakes for large events. For more information, you can call or text CB Treats at 803-386-8472. Again, that's 803-386-8472. Or you can reach CB Treats by email at cbtreats@live.com. That's cbtreats@live.com. CB Treats, making your cake dreams come true.
Welcome back. I'm glad you stayed, because you need to find out the second part of why did God box in his children. The first thing I want us to know, when God boxed in Israel, he was sending a message to Israel, and that message was, first of all, Israel, I want you to understand that going back is not an option. That's the first thing. When God boxes us in something, one of the things that he's saying to us is, I'm keeping you boxed in for two reasons. Number one, you might not be ready to go to the next level that you may even desire to go. You may even have these whims, and you have these kinds of proclivities and these dreams and all of these things that you want to do. But sometimes God says you are not ready for that. So I am protecting you from trying to do something that you are not yet ready to do, nor are you yet capable or mature enough. That was one of the points. The other point about being boxed in, God was taking away Israel's ideas of trying to go back to Egypt and to return to slavery when he had gone through so many different spiritual, divine, theological gyrations to get them released from Egypt. He was saying, why would you want to go back to that place? He boxed them in. Now, before I further elucidate on that idea, I want everybody to take a moment and understand something. You might be in a situation where you feel like you're boxed in, where you can't seem to go forward, yet you seem to be trapped because you can't afford to go back. One of the things that I have found out, when a person is ready to go forward, the one thing that's on their mind is, I am not going back. That's not an option. I am clear that I may not be able to go forward, but I will not go backward. This is when you have reached that saturation point where you are sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you have decided that even if I am not able to get whatever it is that I dream of having, I'm not going back. There may be somebody who's dealing with a job or even a relationship, and it may have been something that was very painful for you. And I'm sure sometimes people try to direct you what you need to do. And the first thing, I really don't mean to digress too much on this, but I do want to say this. Phenomenological designs teach us as one of the first principles that people who are in an external position are not always capable of advising those who are in an internal position. The ones in the internal position is the one where the action is. That's where the weight of the burden is. That's where the pain is. And it's therefore very difficult for people who cannot relate to bearing your pain to know how to really advise you. So the first thing I want us to understand is that God was saying, you don't need to go back because I know what going back was all about. I can relate to that. I was there. I am God. Don't go back. It's what God was saying. God was saying sometimes you have to have a made-up mind that you may not be able to achieve stardom, but you will not go back to starving. Sometimes you have to have that kind of attitude that going back is not an option. Sometimes, my friend, you just have to say, I'm not going back. I don't know where I am going, but I'm not going back. I've had moments like that in my own life when I didn't understand what my future would be, but I had made up my mind that what I was leaving was not going to be a part of my future. What was the second thing that God had on his mind? The second thing God had on his mind, when he had them boxed in, God was letting them know, I put you in a place where no one can help you but me. Now, I don't know who this is going to help. But God might be putting you in a place right now where no one can and no one will assist you or help you. Sometimes God puts us in these positions just so we will understand no one is coming. No one. No one is going to dry your tears. No one is going to hug you. You are in a space where no one can do it but God. And God does this sometimes because God is so interested in having a relationship with all of us. So much so until he places us in a crisis of belief so that we will run to him because there are no other options. The next thing I would like to let you know, when the Egyptians were charging after God's children, the Egyptians miscalculated something. And what they miscalculated, number one, and we're going to have to do this quickly, but number one, they miscalculated that some things God has for his children and it is not available to anyone else. Nobody else will be privileged to have what God has ordained for his children. You know the story. The Red Sea opened up. Wow, had to be magnificent. When the Red Sea opened up, Israel started to cross the Red Sea, and yes, they gathered themselves. And if you would read the story, it lets us know that this had to be an amazing meteorological event because he held the waters back all night long. And Israel had to cross that Red Sea, some 3 miles long, 3 miles wide. They had to get across, and God had to hold the water back, and he did. But the moment the Egyptians tried to come behind them and walk on the same dry bottom of the sea, they thought because they saw Israel do it that they could automatically walk across the same land to the promised land and to recapture them. But you know the story. When they tried to do what God had meant for Israel to do, only the sea came back together and they drowned. What was God doing? All God was doing. God allowed all of these things to happen so that he could lead his children to a miracle moment. And that might be what he's doing in your life right now. There may be some things happening in your life and you are saying to yourself, how in the world am I going to see daylight? How will I be emancipated from this pain? How will I be freed from the clutches of this circumstance? I'm tired, I'm weary, I'm wounded, and I'm even sad. And I do not see any hope in sight. Sometimes God permits that because he wants you to see just how miraculous his powers are. He might be setting you up for a miracle. So I want to say to all of you, get your heads up, get excited about life, quit worrying about the money you do not have, quit worrying about the bills you cannot pay, quit worrying about trying to carry what you cannot carry alone. Sometimes you just have to give up and give in and say, God, if anything is going to happen, you are going to have to do it. I have exhausted my means. I have no other places to turn. And sometimes God does that on purpose, just so we will have an opportunity to find out what he's really capable of doing and what he has special for us. Stay tuned. We'll be back with our conclusion, but you got to hang in there. We got some more to share with you.
Hunger has never been more satisfied as it is when it tastes like the delicious Southern cuisines from the Clinton Inn. Here, flavor is never compromised and palate satisfaction always meets the expectation. The weekly buffet features all of the special dishes to which we have grown accustomed. Come dine with us on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays starting at 11 a.m. and enjoy a scrumptious meal at the Clinton Inn in Laurinburg, North Carolina, where food has never tasted so good. We congratulate Gentile on his Jazz Award from the Kennedy Center for his amazing jazz album, Finally All of Me. He recently had his music played alongside Oscar Peterson, and his music is played in rotation at Tiffany Stores and Outlets. Stream Gentile's album, Finally All of Me, on all streaming platforms today.
We would like to take this time and thank all of you for joining us, and we appreciate how many of you have requested me to do some teaching in our shows, and I'm glad to do that, and I'm just so happy that you have asked me to do this great work. I also would like to ask each of you to continue to help us with our work as we try to spread both the Word of God along with all of the social happenings that are positively impacting our communities across the world. At the bottom of the screen, you can find out all of the ways that you can contribute to our cause. We certainly appreciate all of you who have helped us in the past, and we need so many more to help us with this work. We certainly would appreciate it. Until the next time, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week. Eat a lot and laugh a lot more. I'm J. Gentile Everett. We're looking forward to seeing you again on Social Perspectives.
Have to tell you, the #1 evening show that you need to listen to right now is Social Perspectives with Gentile at 11:30 at night on Sundays. Let me tell you, that is the show to watch, all right?